Warrior Steve. Bad
Big money! Big prizes! I love it!
Hello and welcome to Retrovaniacs, a brand new retro gaming themed show. We focus mainly on the NES, Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, and any other game system up to and including the original PlayStation, Sega Saturn, and N64 era. Every show we will focus on one game. We'll play that game for about a week or two ahead of time, and then we get together here to talk about the games themselves, our experiences playing them, and how we think this game will fare today. Now this is our first show, and I had to re-record the very beginning of the show, which is what you're hearing right now. I'm hoping I can edit the rest of the problems we had out of the show, but if you hear some clipping or some audio fading in and out on some of the phone connections, because we did most of this over Skype, I apologize, and future episodes will have less of these problems. I'm going to go ahead and punch you back into the episode while I'm talking about who I am and why I know about video games. And again, hopefully you like the show, and thank you for listening. My name is Jeremy P., but I'll go by JP. And I've been playing games since, video games since I was about 3. We had an Intellivision system when it was new. And pretty much from that point on, I've played everything up to the newest consoles. But, you know, now I'm in my 30s. I have some kids, so I don't have a lot of time to play 60-hour role-playing games. But I do have time to play, you know, Nintendo and Super Nintendo era games that take about half an hour. So, you know, I play a lot of those now. I'm really enjoying them, and you know, I think at least I've got the experience to say what I do and don't like and why that's a good point. Billy.
Yeah, also have been playing video games a very sad amount of time. I remember playing maybe around the same age you started, 3, 4, Jungle Hunt on the Atari was the first one I recall playing, and I've been in love with them ever since. I've tried to keep up with the newest stuff, but when you get to be about this age, your time really diminishes. But I love going back to try out some of the older games from time to time. And besides that, I'm here to provide some gentle Southern hospitality for the show.
And the third person will be Jeremy G.
Hey there, I am the other Jeremy. I'm basically in charge. Well, I've been making Retrovania for the last couple of weeks. But as far as gaming goes, I've been gaming since I was a kid. So I think the first game I ever saw was Pac-Man for the 2600. Ooh. And yeah, I know. But I was amazed because it was a video game and I was a kid and it was awesome. So I've been just amazed by video games since then. And I try to keep up as much as I can. But still, of course, being in your 30s, it's not easy. So that's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah, Retrovania is a podcast, but it's also a website, sort of a multimedia center for any of the sort of retro gaming things we're doing. So along with this podcast, we have some video clips up there, YouTubes that Jeremy did with some voiceovers on it. We'll probably have some articles. You know, anything we can think of that'll fit, we'll definitely put it up there. So check that out. That'll be updated a lot more often than this podcast is. And you know, a lot of times I don't think it'll be games we're going to talk about on here, but it might be. You know, I don't know if it makes sense to put some clips up there of what we're already talking about, but you know, this is the first episode in the beginning of this website, so we'll see what happens from here. But I think it's pretty much a blank slate to what we want to do, and I think we're kind of all on the same page for once. So,
possibilities are endless.
It seems like things are going pretty well for us so far, so I have high hopes. It has kept my attention for more than 48 hours, so I think...
Not many things do that.
No, it really doesn't.
It's a new record.
Going good so far.
So before we started actually going through if we were really going to do this or not, we put together a list each of 10 or so games that we were interested in doing, and we randomly picked them every week. They were all from, like I said earlier, the PlayStation area to present, or PlayStation area back to, I guess, the dawn of video games, but pretty much NES is where we cut it off so far, although I am tempted to pull out some Intellivision games. But... you know, we randomly picked it, and for this week I thought a good start would be the game Axelay for the Super Nintendo. It's a shooter, and unlike now when you'd say shooter, when everyone assumes you mean Call of Duty, this is an overhead and side-scrolling shooter like Gradius, 1943.
I had never played this one before. It's brand new to me. This was one of Jeremy G's suggestions. Did you play this a lot before this podcast?
Oh yeah. When I was a kid, I played this countless times. I rented it probably a couple of dozen times during the lifespan of the Super Nintendo, and it is probably my favorite shooter of all time. So I was under the impression that everybody else had played this game, or at least you, JP. But I guess I'm the only person that had actually that played it back in the day. So that was kind of a surprise to me.
Yeah, because I maybe I had read about this one, seen a picture or two, had never played it, and I find it hard to believe after looking online. A lot of my rentals were made just based on the box art. And the box art for this one, giant lava monster. I don't know why it didn't pull me in.
That's the only reason I actually rented it, because I didn't like shooters. I still don't like shooters, but seeing that box art and the back of the box was just so amazing looking that I had to pick it up and try it out. So that was my only. I had never seen any reviews or anything in the gaming magazines. I just saw that box and I picked it up.
And that boss is actually in the game, which I was thrilled about, because a lot of times there's something really cool on the box that doesn't appear in the game.
Yeah, he's a Terminator with lava on him. That's great.
You can't go wrong.
No.
Well, I had definitely seen the box, and I remember there were ads for it, because once I got to that boss, I was like, this is that game. This is the game with the fire, the giant fireman boss. But I had never played it, but I didn't have, we had a Super Nintendo, but it was my brother's system. So I somehow got tagged with I had the TurboGrafx 16 at this time frame. So the Super Nintendo was there to use, but it wasn't mine. And the games he was into were not shooters. So, we had Donkey Kong Country and all those Star Wars games and things, but we didn't have any shooters for that system.
How did you have a TurboGrafx 16 and not be into shooters?
Well, no, I was into shooters, but I was the one who had that system. So, I had Blazing Lasers and Game of Thunder and all these other shooters, but my brother was like, no, he wasn't into them. So the games he had on his system, there was some carryover, but it was the only way to stop us from literally beating the crap out of each other every day to have separate systems. I had not played Axelay until now. Did you both play this on the original system for this session, or were you on emulators? I guess we can't really say that, but maybe if you were on a computer somehow that you owned the system and hooked it up to. Let's go with that. I bought it for the Virtual Console because it's on the Wii U Virtual Console.
I also sprung forward on the Virtual Console.
I played it via shady emulation means. So
no.
I know.
Shame,
but I think I rented it enough back in the day that I probably bought it 2 times over. So
You rented it 30 times.
basically, yeah.
They owed you this one.
And actually, the Virtual Console, I didn't really like the Wii U screen controller, so I went out and bought a Pro controller. I'm an idiot, but it's actually really, really good for this game. And any of those Super Nintendo games I had that I've been using the regular controller. I bet it works great on Smash Brothers as well. So I'll have to try that.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
But so I guess to Axelay came out in 1992. It's one of the earlier Konami games for the Super Nintendo. But this was when they really were hitting their stride. This is right in between Super Castlevania 4 for them and Contra 3: The Alien Wars, both of which were games I did play and are amazing games. Those, if you don't have those two games or have played those two games on a Super Nintendo, then you don't need a Super Nintendo. I don't know what you'd be doing without playing those two. So this fits nicely in that category, and it's very much like Gradius, their other big shooter series, and Life Force. But it does try to use the same thing with Contra 3 and Castlevania 4 did. They try to use the Mode 7 scaling rotation that all those early Super Nintendo games really seem to use. And every other level, all the odd levels, 1, 3, and 5, are these top-down kind of 3D levels where you fly in, away from the screen, I guess. It's I found those very distracting.
I'm going to tell you, one of my initial problems was the same. I had a lot of trouble judging the depth of everything. And on the first level, you can easily fly over everything. And there's these kind of brown rock formations. And I thought I just as easily could go over those, but apparently not. You explode and you're dead right there in an instant.
Yeah, it's kind of weird how it is, because it's you don't really know what you're going to hit, and there's a lot of those levels, those top-down levels, that you actually have to, they're kind of maze-like, I think it's actually the third level or something like
Yeah,
that,
the
where
third
you're
level.
flying through the grids, and it can be almost impossible not to hit those if you don't know where exactly you need to be. Otherwise, you're just going to run right into those and die.
Yeah, that happened to me a number of times. First level, but the third level was the one where I really was struggling. I just couldn't get through the last half of it, which is the one with it is all of a maze basically, and there's they look like giant bugs that slide on poles outside of some of the sides, and you had to find specific parts to hit, but because the level kind of fades in as it rotates towards you, it just made it very hard for me at first to figure out what was going on. Once I did figure it out, it becomes seamless and you can do it every time, but the first time through the third level was just awful. And 5, no better. 5's all lava. I guess we'll get into the stages in a second, but 5 was no better. There were things in level 5 where they just popped out, and I didn't know what I couldn't touch, and things were jumping out of everywhere. It was definitely rough. But the other levels, the even levels, are side-scroller levels, more like a traditional Gradius layout, where you literally just go from left to right, and it's pretty clear-cut what you're supposed to shoot and avoid and everything else. And those levels I thought were significantly easier, and I don't know if it was from the view or if they actually were just easier levels, but I had 1 or 2 shots in each of those, and I made it through them.
I had made note of that also. I spent probably the longest amount of time playing the first stage, trying to get through that. The second one, I got through on my first run, and it seemed like that for the side-scrolling.
Well, I mean, the side-scrolling stages, they definitely seem more like Konami's wheelhouse with what they did with Life Force on the NES and a little bit in Gradius as well. But yeah, I mean, it almost seems like those top-down levels were more of a gimmick. Like they weren't trying to go for playability; they were trying to go for this is going to look amazing and it's going to blow everybody's minds when they see this back then. And I think those levels definitely suffered for it and made them a lot harder than the side-scrolling stages.
They were significantly harder, and not for it wasn't like enemy placement or even the level being complex. I just couldn't tell half the time what was dangerous and what wasn't, or even what was dangerous. How am I supposed to hurt it? Unlike a lot of games, a lot of these bosses and bigger monsters they're not monsters, but ships don't really flash or anything if you hit them in the right spot. You just kind of have to know what to do when they die. I mean, most of the time it's not that hard. It's pretty clear what you're supposed to do. But I don't know, maybe I'm spoiled now where everything, every game where you're supposed to shoot something, it flashes or it's bright pink or, there's something you've hit it the right way. Where in this case, there's a lot of the game where I wasn't sure exactly if I was doing any damage or what.
It seemed like there were areas that did flash, but it didn't flash the entire boss. It was like the one tiny area that you were hitting would actually flash, and if you didn't notice that, then you wouldn't even know that you were hitting something.
So I only made it to the 5th level, but I believe there are only 6 levels in this game. Is that correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 6.
Then we can talk about the levels, but before we talk about the levels in any real detail, what I thought made this game different from most other shooters was the way the weapons worked. You didn't fly around a stage and get power-ups in the stage like in a 1943 or honestly most shooters, Legacy, Legendary Wings, or any of those old shooters. This was like you pick your layout at the beginning of the game. You have 3 different weapon options, and you have those weapon options through the entire level. And then if you beat a level, you earn another weapon option until eventually, I guess you have 9 weapon options. So the first 3 weapon options are what they call a straight laser, which I found to be the most absolute worthless weapon on Earth. It was just, it's the one that when you first see it, you're like, oh, that's the weapon I'm going to use for everything, because it looks like every other game's laser, but it has to do 1/10 of the damage of every other laser. And it only fires straight forward in a fairly small area. And the second weapon you get is the round Vulcan, which is, after you learn what it does, it's the best weapon in the entire game, in my opinion. Yep. It starts out behind you, and it starts like a half arc on each side till it shoots forward, so both beams are in front of you. And then when you let go, it shoots all the way back behind you again. Effectively, if you can time it right, you're just shooting bullets everywhere in the screen, along with shooting your missiles.
Yeah, and that's the weapon I basically use the entire game. And even if I get hit, because when you do get hit, you lose that weapon until you die completely. I would just, try to make it as far as I could because there's no way I could go much further without that weapon.
Yeah, I think that one, learning that one and getting that one down is absolutely necessary on there, especially early in the beginning. The first few swarms of enemies actually surround you all around, and if you're not using that, you're going to take damage.
Right. And like Jeremy said a minute ago, when you get hit, if it's by a bullet or a laser, you'll lose whatever the active weapon you have is for the rest of the time until you lose your ship. But if you get hit by a ship or a rock or drive straight into a post, like I did a number of times, you lose the ship then at that point immediately.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you start over with all three of your weapons. I didn't think the missile weapon, the third option is missiles. The first time they're called macro missiles. And I thought those, once I figured out how to use those properly, I didn't mind keeping those all the time. I mean, they didn't give you the area effect that the other bullets did, but when you're fighting a boss or one big ship or just knew exactly where everyone was coming in, those did so much damage. You'd clear almost any enemy out in one hit if you could hit them with those big missiles.
Oh yeah, you can just basically dump that too. I mean, there's no limit on those bombs or anything like that, which is kind of crazy. I think it's the second version of those bombs you get. That shoot just straight down, kind of at an angle, I think. You can just clear out bosses on those side-scrolling stages like nothing.
Yeah, and you get that after the first stage. So you go through the first stage,
Yeah.
which is kind of like it's almost like it's over some ocean or something, or kind of
Right.
and that's a top-down level. It has a mini boss, which is something I haven't seen in a long time, in the middle of that level, which is not a hardship, but it kind of shows you what the boss fights are going to be like. It looks kind of like a face ship with shoots laser straight down and shoots these bursts out, along with shooting homing rockets that you can pretty easily avoid, but it keeps dodging in and under the water, so you can't hit it for a few seconds. But that's one that the first time I got to that, I died over and over again until I realized that, yes, missiles are unlimited, so never stop firing them. And once I did that, you could take it out pretty easily.
Yeah, and I'm used to stuff like missiles are always limited in most of these games. So I used it very sparingly. I tried to get by as long as I could without it, and suffered greatly for it. But as soon as I learned, you can just jam that all you want. That really was a breakthrough, and I finally beat that damn spider at the end of the first level.
Yes, the first level boss it's a metal spider that shoots purple electric webs that will kind of slow your ship down so it can shoot you with other beams, and it shoots these 4 spiders out across to the 4 different corners of the screen that also shoot bullets at you. But they're fairly slow bullets, and they only shoot 2 apiece, and it's actually not... Once I figured out, again, that you could shoot missiles all the time and that the third level missile is super destructive and fires pretty much straight forward, that wasn't so bad, but the first time I got to him, I mean, I must have drove right in the legs immediately and died. And then the second time, the spiders got me, and I thought, I'm only on the first boss, and I'm dying of this embarrassingly. And everything I saw online was that this is not a very hard shooter, so perhaps my skills have gotten incredibly rusty. But yeah, that spider boss did take a little while, but like Billy said earlier, after that, the second level was like I just sneezed and I finished it. There was not that there was no challenge, but it was definitely easier.
Yeah, there's. I mean, going from that first stage into that side-scrolling stage is almost, well, it kind of is a completely different game. It's so much easier. I think most people are just more comfortable playing those side-scrolling stages like that in a shooter, and it's just much more natural. So yeah, if you had a hard time on that first stage, I would hate for anyone just to stop playing because they got so frustrated with it that they stopped. But once you get past that, it seemed like it was just a much easier go of it all around because you start realizing what you can do with those weapons and learning how to play the game.
Oh yeah, and if you stopped at the first stage, you wouldn't have made it to the second to see that Ed 209 cameo.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah, the second boss is like a kind of a half organic Ed 209 walker, or an ATST if you somehow only watched Star Wars and then never watched another movie again. But Ed 209 is a lot closer to what it really looks like. And I didn't have a problem with that boss at all. I mean,
No.
every game that has one of those bosses, it does the exact same thing as this boss. You know, it walks forward and backwards across the screen. It has a Gatling gun that shoots kind of down at a corner, but then when it does stop fully and shoot up in an arc and very slowly turns across the screen, you can easily dodge all of those attacks. So the only way I could see really dying on this boss, other than by accident, was when I only had that terrible first shot left over, and it was taking so long that I just got impatient and tried to fire missiles at it and then ran into the wall.
I think back when I was a kid, that was the first boss that I realized how that spread weapon worked. Because I think Billy kind of did the same thing. When you first use it, the one that starts shooting backwards and you hold it down, it spreads out around you. You don't realize that you can actually hold that button down. So you just think it shoots behind you constantly. But with that boss, I actually held that down. And that's a weapon that you can definitely just kind of, get right into where its weak spot is and just take it down just, super quick.
I did the same thing, sort of, except that I had already had that first weapon that was terrible, so I was used to already holding the button down. So when I tried the second weapon, I held it down, and it went forward, and I was like, oh, this is awesome. And I don't think I ever let go of that button until I died for probably my first 5 playthroughs. So I didn't realize when you let go, it also shoots back around you.
Yeah.
Once I realized that, and you don't have to hold the button at that point. You let go, and it just kind of slowly shoots a bunch of bullets as it goes all the way back down. And that's the point where I was thought, oh, I'm playing this all wrong. Okay, if I start over with this gun and I use it the right way. So as soon as I start any game, I don't know if you guys do this, but I immediately, I don't care what's on the screen, every level, I'm just trying to get to that gun and get it forward, and then I feel like I can at least have a chance.
Right, yeah. I think that's one reason why I like this game so much, rather than other shooters, because those weapons are right there for you. And you don't get any power-ups as you're going through these stages, like you said. So you start off with the weapons that you're good at, and if you get hit, you lose them. It's your fault. So, I mean, you don't have to sit there and watch for power-ups constantly to come through and be like, oh, that's the one that I need. It's just right there whenever you start the level.
Right, and I guess I was surprised there was no way to get those back anyway in the level. When you finish the level, you get all your guns back, but other than that, death is the only way you get it back. And thankfully,
zero power-ups anywhere, which is crazy for a shooter.
Not even like point pickups. There's nothing. It's just shoot everything until it dies and then move to the next. The extra lives in the game, I think it's whenever you beat a boss, or maybe it's every 50,000 points. I can't figure out which it is.
It's a points thing. I'm pretty sure it's a points thing because I was racking up lives while I was actually fighting a boss. So
okay,
I don't know what the point spread is for it, but it's definitely a point thing.
It might be 500,000. I'm not sure. I don't remember what the point difference is in this, but it's either 50,000 or 500,000. But yeah, because it's whenever I would kill a boss, though, I would break that plane as well. So I'd get the extra life. And I'd be over 50,000. I'm like, okay, well, it's got to be 50,000. But then it kept happening consistently, and I wasn't paying attention to the score. So I thought maybe it's just when you beat a boss. But you only get 2 lives, or 3 lives when you start, the one you have and two in spare. And thankfully, unlike a lot of shooters from this time period, you don't go back to a spot if you die. When you die, you come immediately back where you were. It doesn't pause the enemies. It doesn't restart the bosses, so you have to start with new life every time on their life bar or whatever. It's just... you come right back in. You come in from the bottom as if you were playing, a 2-player Contra.
Right. That's one thing that keeps the frustration level low for someone like me that doesn't really like shooters. I hate being punished by getting hit once and then having to redo the entire level. This game gave me 3 lives, and also, as long as I didn't run into anything, it gave me 3 hits per life, which that you can go pretty far, even if you're kind of sucking at it.
Right.
So that's one of the great things about that.
Yeah, by the time we're recording this now, I hadn't played this before, and I've been playing this for what, I guess 4 or 5 days. And at this point, if I can manage to get through an entire level with at least 1 gun left, and I have 2 or 3 lives to just slam at a boss, I'm good to go. I mean, I've learned those first 3 bosses pretty well.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Although the third boss, we didn't really talk about him. So the second boss was Dead 209, and then the third level is another top-down level. It looks like it's kind of over a space city or kind of over a space base. That's the one that has all these kind of maze-like tubings that are floating in the level you're in. And you're supposed to find the joints to shoot out. And thankfully, in most of that part, the joints are bright orange. And it's pretty easy to see them, except that, again, they fade in. So sometimes if you're not right in the right spot, you don't see it until there's no way you can hit it.
Right.
to shoot the joints out to continue forward. But the boss of that level has 3 stages, although the first stage is pretty much a joke. At first, it's like an eye with 4 little ships around it, but the ships all die in one hit. And then the eye goes to the bottom, and it becomes a cone that has a bunch of nodes on the bottom of the cone, like a traffic cone. And all the nodes shoot a whole bunch of bullets while it spins around. And I can't figure out exactly how I'm not dying constantly there, because that's a lot of bullets, and they just vanish at some point.
Yeah, they get kind of about 3/4 of the way down at you, and they'll just kind of explode. And I was actually, I forgot about that, and I was like, man, I'm either really fucking good at this, or then I noticed they were actually just kind of fading away.
Well, now I'm completely deflated now. I thought I was actually doing something good there.
Maybe we're all better than we think, but I think it's just that the bullets explode early. The only thing I could think of is maybe when you destroy the node, the bullets immediately vanish. I don't really know, but it's spinning so fast I couldn't target a specific node on it. I would just fire at it blindly with the mask gun and all my missiles, and eventually it would be down to 1 or 2, and then I could target that 1 or 2, and then when you destroy all the nodes, the cone flies away, and it looks almost like another red crab monster, but without legs, I guess, so just the body of a crab. And that has 4 big guns on it that it's pretty clear when they're going to fire, and you have to kind of dodge all the fire while you shoot the crab in the middle of the face. That's a pretty classic shooter-style boss, I thought.
Yeah.
But that's part where it spins. I just couldn't figure out how not to die unless it was just the bullets were vanishing. I just couldn't figure that out. So that was one where, I made it through the level enough times where I can get through the level without even getting hit once, and with the idea that I'm just going to slam lives away on this boss and save my good bullets for the end.
Yeah, this is the first level where I didn't use the gun we were talking about that can shoot behind, and I tried out that needle cracker. For the life of me, I can't tell if it's the best game I've used in a shooter or the worst.
It's kind of both.
Yeah. I mean, it's no clear pattern on it. If you jam down on the fire button, it looks like it was animated by a small child. Its lines going every which way. Seems effective sometimes, and sometimes it seems to conveniently dodge all the enemies.
Yeah, it's supposed to be some sort of, a homing laser, but sometimes it does home in on things, and other times it just kind of acts like it doesn't know what the hell it's doing. So you really never know if it's going to be useful or not. Really, the only way to use it, because so many shoot out of your ship at the same time, is just kind of get close to whatever you want to kill, and enough will eventually home in on that enemy to kill it.
Yeah, you earned that weapon at the end of level 2, and so I started using it the first couple times I played level 3 and thought it was beyond useless, because you're right, it kind of goes wherever it wants to go, and in level 3, there's enough little things around that it really isn't very effective. I found the regular weapon, the round Vulcan, way more useful on that level. However, level 5, which is the last top-down level that I've made it to, which is all lava, that's one where everything you're fighting is not as in number, but they all fly at you. There's like dragons that fly out and slam into you, and there's all the ships that come on the side and try to slam into you. That was one where I was able to use that gun pretty much the entire way through the level, and it destroyed everything. And I'm glad I tried it again, because up to that point, I just written that gun off as something never ever to use.
Yeah, it just kind of has a life of its own for the most part, and I never really could master it, but it definitely had its uses here and there, and I always preferred it. I don't know if I preferred it over the default weapon or not, but it for some levels it was all right.
So we didn't really talk about level 4, but level 4 is kind of it's another side scroller, and it's in a cave, and everything's an organic being. There's lots of things that you shoot and they explode in other bullets. That weapon is extremely like an R-type or a Gradius level the whole way through. Kind of hard in parts because everything does explode bullets at you, but generally not that bad. I didn't have many problems with level 4 at all. It's partly underwater, and it ends with this fish boss that I found to be fairly easy once you realize you just fly around it in circles.
Yeah, either that or just stay right up above it and use that second bomb weapon and just, dump on it, and it's dead pretty quick.
And then level 5 was the lava level. It's the last top-down level of the 6. And that's the one that has the giant lava monster guy at the end. There is no middle boss. It's just a lot of you have to dodge around this almost sandworm-like creature that comes out of the lava several times. And that, I don't know if you guys saw that. Well, we all played it on the Virtual Console, I think. But that's one that had a lot of slowdown. Whenever the worm would come up, it would crawl, which was surprising. I guess that's what the Super Nintendo would have done. But I guess I'm just surprised it didn't kind of fix that for the Wii U. I'm sure it can handle that.
I think a lot of those emulated games on the Wii U, they try to keep as close as possible. I don't know if they've ever fixed any like that. Do you know? Because
I don't think it was a matter of fixing. I thought it was just a problem with pushing the hardware. But clearly aren't pushing the hardware at that
Super Nintendo
point.
wasn't very good for stuff like that anyway. It seemed like some games, if more than 2 or 3 things got on the screen, it was going to slow down. But
right.
It was definitely a mess for something trying to push that amount of effects on that game. It's I guess I could see it.
Yeah, and I don't think on the Virtual Console they've really tried to fix that. I know it used to be frustrating back then. At some point in time, it's turned into charming almost. I remember, to speak of, I guess to keep example, the esteemed Nintendo now holds the infamous Nintendo slowdown in. It's not new, but a newer one. When Contra 4 came out, there was actually an option on there where you could turn the slowdown on intentionally when the screen filled up. So I don't see the slowdown going away on any Virtual Console games.
I don't mind it necessarily. It is exactly like I would want it to be. I was just kind of surprised that it happened. Because, again, this wasn't one I had played before. So for me, it wasn't a matter of, and this is where it slows down, and I'm ready for it. For me, it was like, I'm playing this game I'd never touched before. The rest of the game's pretty smooth. You get to that point, and it was like, whoa, okay, I remember what this is like now.
Yeah, I guess that is about the only time, or about the first time it crops up in that game, which is pretty crazy for as much as it's putting on screen at any one time in all those stages.
So level 5 ends with that lava monster that I have never beaten. I tried against him a bunch of times right before we came on, and I'm still not beating him. Did you guys get to the next level or beat the next level?
I made it to the conclusion of the game. The next level, I thought, generally seemed pretty uninspiring, really. I thought the last boss, the best I can put it, kind of a giant mutant frog type thing.
I got to the lava boss. This time, I did not get past him, but I did beat it several times, of course, back when I was a kid. So I kind of remember the last level, but not much. Obviously, it didn't make that much of an impact with me, but if Billy's the only one that beat it, he's probably going to have to describe it to us again.
Well, and I took notes on all the levels. I don't really have any for the last one because it was nothing that really stood out. It's a side scroller, so and in keeping with the theme, its difficulties a little bit further down. You pick up this weapon, and for all I talked about the needle cracker being unpredictable, you pick up the wind laser, and however bad you thought the needle cracker was, the wind laser is about 10 times worse. I found no general at all. They throw a lot of enemies at you in this one, and the last boss, it's a double-parter. One thing pretty cool about the end, you think you have it won, and it's doing the whole, the whole environment starting to explode. You're trying to hightail it out of there, and you think that's it. The boss comes back, and you're actually having to outrun this explosion and fight this last boss at the same time, which I really haven't seen anything like that before. I thought that was pretty cool. And you guys will be happy to know, at the end, you've saved the solar system.
I was worried. This time you get to the end, and all of a sudden there was another larger alien force you had to worry about.
Super relieved about that.
So I guess since this is the first episode, we don't really have any listener mail to go over or any other comments from anybody. For Axelay itself, if you knew somebody that found a copy of the game in a Super Nintendo, would you tell them to go ahead and play this or not play it? Are you going to play it again after this podcast? I think I actually like this game. I don't have a lot of this kind of shooter anymore on the Virtual Console, at least. So it's nice to have it there, and you can play through a round in under half an hour, which is a nice treat in 2015. But what do you think, Jeremy?
I would totally recommend it for people. It's like I said before, it's my favorite shooter of all time, and I would definitely recommend it to people that hate bullet hell style games. It's accessible. It's not super frustrating. It's not long at all, and it's really fun. It's held up over the years, and I definitely play it at least once a year or so, whatever I can find it on. It's one of the things that if a virtual console does come out, that's that and Super Castlevania. As soon as they come out, that's usually the ones I get. So yeah, I totally recommend it to anybody, and I think it's still a great game today.
Billy, what about you? Do you think you'll play this again, or is this kind of a fun for the podcast and that's it?
Personally, myself, having played through it, I don't really see myself going back to play it again. I had read, I didn't have time to do it. If you beat it twice on the hardest difficulty, there's apparently a little teaser at the end for a second sequel that never happened. But I in no way was going to attempt one playthrough on the hard difficulty. And I thought about maybe going back to, but I don't think there's enough to bring me back to it. But that's nothing negative about the game itself. I really enjoyed it. Dislike this type of game in general. So for me to be able to say I did enjoy playing it, I would recommend anybody to play it. And like Jeremy said, it's not one of those bullet hell games that have become popular that kind of pride themselves on their impossibility. I think this one, it's difficult, but it's accessible enough to where you can enjoy it. And yeah, if you've got a Super Nintendo and you find this thing for a few bucks at a flea market or online, or if it's on sale on the virtual console, I say go for it. You could do a lot worse.
I definitely think if you're a fan of early Super NES Konami games, check that one out, because it's one of their better ones, definitely.
Yeah, I'd say it's better than the more recent Gradius games, and that's a much bigger series for them. I don't think there was another Axelay at all.
No, that was it.
And that's one of the ones I looked up ahead of time to see if Axelay was part of another series we didn't get the pieces of. That happens a lot in the U.S., or at that time it did. But yeah, no, this was a one-shot. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and like I said, I think we're all in agreement that it was fun, and it isn't a bullet hell shooter. I've played a good deal of those. It's definitely very dodgeable. You have to pay attention, but nothing is really blindsiding you for the most part. The next episode, at the end of every episode, we're going to randomly pick one of the games on our list. We have 30 games that we've picked so far. If you want us to try a specific game that you're a big fan of from, again, PlayStation era or earlier, give us an email. They'll be on our website, and in future episodes, I'll actually have an email when I plan ahead what I'm going to say. But this time we randomly picked, and we got the game Low G-Man for the Nintendo Entertainment System. And that'll be episode 2, which should be out probably 2 weeks after this one. The plan is to put these out every 2 weeks. I don't know if it'll be a set day or not, but we'll definitely have more information on retrovania.net. So thank you very much for listening, and I will see you next time.